Hey everybody, today we're going to be learning about sentence focus and finding the subject of a sentence. Once we can find what the subject of a sentence is, then the sentence will seem more focused and more easy to understand, more clear for us. If we are writers and we are writing a sentence, we need to have a very clear subject of that sentence so that our writing is focused and clear. Let's start by identifying what the subject of a sentence is. For most of you, this is review. What is the subject of a sentence? Well, the subject of a sentence is the person, place, thing, or idea that is doing something or being something. Here's an example. Jennifer sleeps at 9:30 every night. Well, we know that Jennifer is the subject because the sentence is containing a word of someone who is doing something. So what is she doing? She sleeps. So Jennifer becomes the subject because she is doing the action of sleeping. Now, when we are looking for the subject, we must always ask these two questions. Number one, who or what is doing the action, right? Like in our last sentence, it was Jennifer because she was sleeping. But what if there is no action? Sometimes sentences have words like is, was, be, or are. So if someone said Mrs. Hahn is really short, there's no action in that sentence. I can't go outside and is or was. There's no action. So in this case, if we have a linking verb like is, was, be, or are, then we must ask ourselves the second question right here. If there is no action, who or what is the sentence about? Let's look at this example. Every day Jennifer is tired. Jennifer's not doing anything in that sentence. So in this case, Jennifer is still the subject because we know this sentence is about Jennifer. So you see there's a linking verb is here. So when you have a sentence that doesn't have an action verb or an action word, that means you need to ask yourself the sentence second question. Who or what is this sentence about? That is going to be your subject. The next thing you need to remember is that sometimes there is a compound subject. This means that there's often more than one. There could be two, there could be three. Let's look at this sentence. At the local Burger King, Jenny and Arish gasped when they saw hair in their food. Gross. So we have to ask ourselves, we have a lot of nouns here. Is the subject Burger King? Is it Jenny? Is it Arish? Is it hair? Is it food? Well, go back to your questions. Who or what is doing the action, or who or what is the sentence about? In this case, there is an action. We know the subject is not Burger King because Burger King is not doing an action. The action word is gasped. So who is doing the action? Not just Jenny, but Jenny and Arish are doing that action. So both Jenny and Arish are the subjects of the sentence. They become what we call a compound subject, where there's more than one name. Now, here's what we're going to do. I want you to pause this video, and I want you to just get a piece of scratch paper. This is truly practice to see if you understand. I'm going to read through these questions, and you can pause after each one. I just want you to write down as an accountability check what you think the subject of each sentence is. Then you can press play, and you can check and see if your answers are correct. Okay, I'm just going to quickly read through the sentences, and then you can pause and write down what you think the subject of each sentence is. Number one, each day the dog sleeps under the table. Number two, Jennifer's paper is really hard to read. Number three, I hate waking up early. Number four, Jennifer gave Mark a candy bar. Number five, both dogs had to go to the vet. Number six, the poodle and the golden retriever got fleas. Number seven, as it turned the corner, the car ran into the curb. Number eight, Mrs. Hahn's class is great. Now, pause the video, but don't forget your two questions. Who or what is the sentence about, or who or what is doing the action? Remember, a subject has to be a person, place, thing, or idea. So you're looking for nouns. So for number one, you know that the subject, is going to be day or dog or table, because those are the nouns, people, place, things, ideas. So you have to figure out which of those words is the subject. Pause the video. On the next slide, I'm going to show the answers. Okay, let's see how you did. Some of these were pretty easy and some were a little more challenging. So number one, the subject is not day, it's dog, because the action is sleep. So who's doing the action? The dog. So the dog sleeps. Okay, number two, Jennifer's paper is really hard to read. There is no action here. In fact, we have a linking verb is. So in this case, I say, what is the sentence about? Be careful. A lot of times people will say, well, the sentence is about Jennifer. No, the sentence is about Jennifer's paper. That's what we're talking about. Number three, I hate waking up early. The action is hate. Who's doing that action? I hate waking up early. It's true, I do. So I becomes the subject. Let's look at number four. Jennifer gave Mark a candy bar. Here, Jennifer does the action. We have Jennifer and Mark, but don't be tricked. This is not a compound subject. The action is giving, and only one person does the giving. That's Jennifer. So in this sentence, Jennifer is the only subject. Number 5, both dogs had to go to the vet. Well, both really is the subject, or I would accept both dogs because both are doing the action of going. Number 6, the poodle and the golden retriever got fleas. Again, the action got, and both the poodle and the golden retriever got. So in this case, unlike number 4, both words here, golden retriever and poodle, both are the subject. Let's look at number 7. As it turned the corner, the car ran into the curb. Now don't be tricked. The subject is not always at the very beginning of the sentence. The action is ran. So corner is not the subject. Who or what ran? The car ran into the curb. So who or what is doing the action? The car. And number 8, Mrs. Hahn's class is great. Again, a lot of times students will say, oh, Mrs. Hahn is the subject. No, that sentence is not about Mrs. Hahn. That sentence is about class, my class. So the class becomes the subject because that is what the sentence is about. Okay, so that's our quick review on how to identify the subject. Now we're going to learn about confusing subjects. So this is something that my students do a lot of times where they just write sentences that are really wordy and confusing. It's good to sometimes find the one or two correct words that just really, really encapsulate or represent the idea that you want to explain or use in your sentence. So let's read number 1. Laying in bed and watching TV instead of doing homework will most likely cause you to get behind in your classes. Now, when I say that sentence, you understand what it's about, but this is what we would call a wordy sentence. This entire phrase is the subject. And in order to have a sentence that's focused, we want a sentence that has a 1 or 2 word, hopefully a 1 or 2 word subject. We want to focus this. So I want to think about what would be a good vocabulary word to replace that entire phrase that's really wordy. So laying in bed and watching TV instead of doing homework will most likely cause you to get behind in your class. So think about what word we could use to replace that with. Let's look at our next one. Fernanda's custom of always telling the truth made people trust her and want to be her friend. Again, this is a great sentence, but it's a little bit too wordy. So if my entire subject of my sentence is Fernanda's custom of always telling the truth, all of that is the subject. That's too ambiguous, too confusing. It's not concise. It's not as clear and focused as we want it to be. So we have to think about what word could I use instead of custom of always telling the truth. Here's number 3. Always putting his work off until later was Nikhil's worst habit. So again, I would like a more focused subject. So I want to pick one word that would replace this, always putting his work off until later. So let's go back to number 1. Laying in bed and always watching TV instead of doing homework will most likely cause you to get behind in your classes. Here is one word. What if we just said laziness? Laziness will most likely to get behind in your classes. If you want to keep explaining later, that's great, but by having that one concise subject, that really focuses the sentence. So we don't want a confusing subject because that will make a sentence that is wordy and unfocused. We want a concise subject that makes our sentence clear. So instead of laying in bed and watching TV instead of doing homework will most likely cause you to get behind, it's laziness will most likely cause you to get behind. Let's look at number 2. Fernanda's custom of always telling the truth made people trust her. Instead of all of that, I could just say Fernanda's honesty. Fernanda's honesty made people trust her and want to be her friend. Now, you could even reword this sentence if you wanted to. Instead of saying Fernanda's honesty made people trust her and want to be her friend, I would totally accept a reworded sentence like this. People trusted Fernanda and wanted to be her friend because she was always honest. Either way, I'm fine with that. Here's our third one. Always putting his work off until later was Nikhil's worst habit. That sentence makes sense, but it's really wordy and unfocused. So I'm going to replace this entire phrase with the word procrastination. Procrastination was Nikhil's worst habit. So by replacing that really wordy subject, it makes our sentences more focused. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to practice these 2 skills that we learned. So you need to go to the Lesson 2 folder in Buzz. So this is for week 17. Go to the Lesson 2 folder and open up your copy of the Sentence Focus Practice It activity. Now, make sure you read through the instructions and the example up here. But then what I have done is I have given you several sentences with really wordy subjects. So Patrick's not being very excited to see his wife or talk to her made Mary very nervous. You need to replace that underlined subject with one of the words in the word bank up here. That's part one. Then for part two, you must highlight the subject. So you have 7 sentences. You must highlight the subject of the sentence based on the notes that we took. So good luck as you complete this activity. All right, this is not something you're going to turn in for a grade, but hint, 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 you have a quiz next week over several writing skills that we're going to work on. And this is writing skill number 1, finding the subject and focusing your sentence. That's writing workshop skill number 1. Next week, we're going to have a quiz over all of our writing workshop skills, and this is one of them. So you will be allowed to use this on your quiz next week. Good luck.